All right. So what we're going to do is we're going to actually use AI. We're going to use a number of different tools, including ChatGPT, Gemini, and depending on how this flows, I might use several other tools. Claude is one of my favorites, but we'll see if we end up actually using it. So ChatGPT, Gemini, the way that I'm focused on doing this is for people who use ChatGPT regularly. Now, of course, if you don't use ChatGPT regularly, this will still work, but you'll miss out on this very first part. So the first part is, and the reason why you use ChatGPT regularly is because now ChatGPT, the way it has rolled out, it allows it to draw on the context of the sum of your conversation. So if you have a chat history that's deep and storied like mine, then you're going to have an enormous amount of conversational context to be able to draw on, and that's exactly what I'm going to do here. So the first question I'm going to ask it is, from what you know of me, we're going to build a workbook for me to learn and deepen my knowledge in one key skill, and I want you, again, from what you know of me, to recommend that one key skill. Start with a list of 5. Narrative intelligence, oh, that's fun. Deep pattern recognition, a really powerful skill. Okay, so while ChatGPT continues to think about this and fill in, let me talk about why I think this is important. So there's this trend, and I think it's a great one, and I want it to continue. There's this trend of building things with AI, or working with AI, or doing your work for your job with AI. And one of the problems that's happening with that trend, and I'm actually starting to see it happen, is people at high levels, manager, director, managing director, are asking AI to work with them on something, and they're not engaged in the process. And the end result is maybe excellent work because it's a combination of human skill and AI as a tool, but the end result is someone who's disconnected from the process and disconnected from the final result. And if there is any degree of scrutiny, and there should be because all business is human business, if there's any degree of scrutiny, the person who did that work and was disconnected will not be able to stand up to the scrutiny. And this is a problem. Because this is all business is human business, and you need to be connected to your work. Okay, so this process that I'm doing right here, especially when it's connected to the way that you have been feeding information into this tool, this is allowing you to take a look through the looking glass at the thing that this tool, and the tool doesn't know everything, what this tool thinks that you could and would be interested in deepening in your own skill sets. Cognitive presence, I like it. Semantic sculpting, yes, this is a good one, especially for this video. Inner alchemy, oh, you're speaking my language, oh my goodness. All right, we're gonna go with semantic sculpting. I think that's a perfect one to focus on specifically for this video, especially considering I just wrote a book about this. So we're actually gonna start with this one, but again, ask it for 5. If you don't like that list of 5, and there's a chance that you won't, go ahead and challenge it. And so I'm going to show you what challenging looks like, even though I'm happy with number 4. Number 4. Okay. There's a reason why I told it to pull from an entirely separate version of the chat history that it has access to, because you might even have noticed this. We design tools to work with the user. Humans kind of get in a rut sometimes, where you ask a question about a thing and you get an answer, and you ask a different question about that thing, hoping to get a different answer, but you get the same answer again. If we get into a rut like this, well, ChatGPT will do the same thing. It gets into the ruts. You probably have seen this most when you're playing around with it, asking it to design pictures for you. So you get a picture and you're like, all right, change this and this. And then it gives you basically the same picture. And you're like, but you didn't change what I told you to change. It gets into these ruts. But if you come at it from a different perspective, instead of just, change this and this, you say, all right, listen, we need to actually go completely separate. So forget what we've done and start over from this. This gives it a chance to move out of that rut and actually come at it from a different perspective. Oh yeah, tactical improvisation, that's a good one. Storytelling, You notice how this is a genuinely different, list. Okay, you don't need to say great, ChatGPT doesn't need to see great. It does change the way that you receive answers. So we're sort of teaching people to do this on videos, but it's actually completely unnecessary. The reason it changes that is because it puts the conversation into a different angle. But at the end of the day, if your prompting is fairly specific and fairly critical in the way that you're focused on your interaction with this idea, using things like great end up just being extra. But it's still good for you on your own process. So you don't need to say great, but I'm doing it just for my own process. So we're going with semantic sculpting. And if you're following along, you probably have a different skill that you're playing with, but I'm doing this one. So the first thing that I'm asking it for is I want a detailed approach to pulling together the information that I'm going to need to be able to get a full understanding of the idea of the skill of semantic sculpting. Now I'm going to switch out of ChatGPT 4.0 and move into O3, which is one of the reasoning models. Now I switch between models, and I'm going to do switching between models live on this and talk to you about why. But I do switch between models, and I don't think that there's any one model that will give you the best result at all times, which is the reason why I hot switch. So right now I'm in O3, the reasoning model. And of course, here it is on the screen telling you it's using its reasoning. That's exactly what I want to see. Advanced prompt engineering techniques. It'd be interesting to see if it pulls up my book. Okay, this is good. You may be looking at semantic sculpting yourself, or you may be looking at a different thing based on what you pulled up and what you want to focus on. Now, you should know a thing or two about it, because again, going all the way back to the top here, we started out with from what you know of me. The reason we started out with that, one was because I wanted it to be able to pull from the chat history that you've built up in this tool, but the other is, again, we don't want to be doing things where we're disconnected from the process and disconnected from the outcome. I need you to know a thing or two about what you're working in here so that when you get this as an output, you have some basic understanding to be able to look at this and decide whether or not this is a good answer. Because if you can't decide, who knows? ChatGPT doesn't know. It's just a language model. It's not a human. It doesn't have its own intelligence. You have to be able to decide if this is a good output. Good approach. I don't think I care about that. Not from this perspective. You're not going to build the skill, and you're not going to be a coaching tool for me. We're going to build a workbook. Prompt lab experiments. That's good. Okay. But we're going to drop 3. Frame deck library is great. I don't want to use Miro. I use it for work. I don't love it. It's not great for me. A similar tool like Miro would potentially work. Trello is a great example. Again, I don't love it. I'm going to actually pull the visual synthesis out. I think that a well-designed workbook is going to be self-encapsulated. So you're going to be able to do all of the work that you want to do to build the skill inside the tool itself. We're going to sort of graduate from that in the next few years, where we're going to be using true multimedia experiences, but at this point, that's not what I'm looking to build. So I'm going to pull out 3, because I don't want it to be pretending that it's my coach. And I'm going to pull out 6 because I don't want this to be a multimedia experience. I want this to be focused inside the book. I'm going to pull out 7. This isn't about feedback loops. This is about a tool, the workbook, that's going to give me the capacity to engage with a skill. These are good. Pull out 3, 6, 7, and give me the outline again. Rewrite, and you're going to want to say this too. So pull out the pieces that don't serve you, and then you're going to want to rewrite it. Rewrite as a workbook outline. Include all of the remaining above. There we go. Now is when I'm going to drop a mega bomb. I'm going to drop down here to 4.5 more models. At some point, they're actually going to remove this, but there's a reason why I use 4.5 now, and I'm going to pop open tools, and I'm going to run deep research. Now, sometimes I use deep research, and I don't use 4.5. In this case, I want to use 4.5 specifically for this reason. I'm going to just copy this directly, drop it here into 4.5, and I'm going to say, here's my outline. Using this outline, do all of the deep research to pull together everything that I need to be able to write this workbook. Drop the outline, hit enter. It's going to ask you some questions, which is what you want. Notice it stays in 4.5 and deep research mode. Academic, cutting edge, or applied practitioner level sources are a mix. So 1, mix, but leaning on cutting 2. Theoretical more than case studies. There's a reason for this. It should ask you questions kind of like this. In a workbook, I don't care about case studies so much because we're not trying to prove the case. That said, don't hang your hat just on this step and stop watching the video, because we're gonna come back to that in a little bit later in this video. 3, I want you to omit model specific prompting. I want this to be about my skill, not about the tool. All right, here we go. Deep research is going to cut on. Then we've got the result of the deep research. Now I'm going to give a scan through it really quick. I haven't looked at it just yet. But one of the cool things about using 4.5, which is the reason why I did it, and deep research, and then asking it to specifically focus on this outline, is that the result is actually a nearly usable version of it. Now, it doesn't matter. It sort of matters. It sort of matters. Don't get me wrong. It does matter. But this is not our final. So we're scanning together. Hopefully you're scanning your version of whatever it is that you are researching while I'm scanning mine. Good. That's exactly what I want. And again, I've written a book on this. You can find it on Amazon. You'll be able to see it in the link here. So I'm in a position to be able to just scan this and make sure it has what I want. Good. I'm going to want these, just a note sort of, I'm speaking out loud, but I'm going to actually want these in the book. So the prompt lab is participation based in the book. I like that it did this. Of course, we knew it because we saw it in the outline, but I like the way that it did this. Okay, now follow along. Here's what we're going to ask it to do. And this is big because I'm actually going to switch over to Gemini shortly. So I'm going to jump back to O3 for this. The reason I want to use O3 and not 4.0, so 4.0 is sort of the base model for ChatGPT. I want to use O3 right now because it has a wider context window, which means that it can actually ingest and manage a larger amount of information than the 4.0 model can. And we just dumped, I mean, you just looked at this with me. It's a nearly finished small version of a workbook. So we just dumped a full workbook in here. And so 4.0 is going to have a hard time ingesting and managing all of that knowledge. Now, I know, you're looking at this and you're like, it's all in one chat. What's the problem? But 4.0 has a limited context window. It's about 125,000 tokens. You can look up what tokens mean later. That's not what this video is about. And I want to make sure that I can actually work with all of this. So I'm using O3 for this particular question. Also, I want the output to be really high quality, and O3 is going to give a higher quality output than 4.0. So I want 3 specific, complete, thorough prompts, which I'm going to take to my research assistant, which will give me much deeper knowledge and source material for the entirety of the idea, and give me those 3 prompts. Start each one with do a deep research report on, and then conclude each one by asking my research assistant to give me all available material and a roll-up and summary of what was researched, found, and aggregated into my total knowledge of this subject. See, what this is going to do is it's going to give 3 separate prompts. There's a reason for that. When I jump over to Gemini, Gemini's deep research engine is actually way, way better than ChatGPT's deep research engine for a couple of reasons. I'm going to go back and forth between Gemini and ChatGPT and I'll talk to you as I'm jumping between them. But in this case, what I want to be able to bring all of that knowledge over into Gemini later. And right now I want to use the really huge capacity that Gemini has, because Google is at its heart a research company. So of course they're not going to allow their research tool to be second in the market. Gemini is absolutely an extraordinary research tool as long as you know what you're looking for. And that's basically what I did here. Is I pulled together an outline, I pulled together a fairly decently fleshed out approach to it. That's what all this is. But now I'm going to take all of that, and just like I said here, break it down into 3 different prompts and dump those 3 different prompts into Gemini and allow Gemini to do what it does better. And that is be the most extraordinary deep research engine on the market. So here we are over here in Gemini. Remember, you click deep research, so I'm in pro version deep research. Now I can just drop that prompt exactly as it was, copy, paste, dropped, go. And Gemini, just like ChatGPT, is going to ask for clarification. But what Gemini does instead of ChatGPT is it actually puts together, and that's what it's doing right now, you can't see it, it puts together an outline of the process that it's going to take in order to do the deep research that you just asked for it. And then when it asks for clarification, really what it's asking for is for you to look through that outline, make sure that it accomplishes the goals that you want, and then approve it. So give it a sec. While it's doing that, I'm going to review and make sure that this is in fact what I asked for, which is 3 separate prompts that together cover the entirety of the material. Foundational principles of cognitive semantics, exactly what I want, okay? Image schema research, conceptual blending, embodied cognition, this is exactly what I want, that's perfect, okay. So now I'm gonna let this one go. And this one, just like ChatGPT, this is probably gonna take about 10 minutes, but before I jump out of here, I have 2 other prompts that I wanna get in there. Now, once you start with Gemini, you actually don't have to stay in that window. Unlike ChatGPT, you have to leave this open and just let it do its thing. In Gemini, I can actually start a brand new chat and I can let that go, and it sits here, right there, Semantic, Sculpting Research Plan. And I can actually go grab this second one, make sure to click Deep Research, drop that in. I'm going to review. It's doing the exact same thing. It's building a plan to accomplish what I asked. Now I'm going to go review so that I know what I'm approving. Nice. See, now it's building the libraries that we talked about. I wanted those libraries. I'm looking forward to those. It's asking for categorization. See, O3 did a good job here. I'm happy with this. Of course, I want all material and sources and the roll-up summary, exactly what I asked for. Okay. Now I know what I'm approving. Now when Gemini drops this in, I know what I'm reviewing and I know what I'm approving. Archetypes, pattern libraries, this is good. Persuasive design, perfect. Conceptual metaphor theory, yes. Narrative archetypes. This is powerful stuff. This is actually going to be really useful research material. It's also stuff I've written on, so if you go find me on some of the other platforms out there, you'll see me writing on some of this as well. Conceptual blending. This is exactly what I want. So I'm going to let that one start. Now I'm going to come down here and take a look at prompt 3 and drop that into Gemini as well. And again, we get to just let Gemini do its thing as soon as it has started. You got to wait until it has started. There it is. Now I can start over here. Remember, click deep research, drop prompt 3 in, model agnostic prompt design, exactly what I want, cognitive load theory. Good stuff to study. If you guys are following along with me, studying this is good regardless of what you want to do. This is powerful stuff. Good. Okay, I know what I'm approving. Now let's take a look at what Gemini has taken from this prompt. That's what I want. Throwing in the cognitive psychology, which you see here, so it's doing what I asked for. A/B testing frameworks. I don't much care about the coaching dialogues, but I'm not actually going to tell it to pull that out. It's okay if it's in there. Again, it's useful. So I'm going to let it go. All right, so while Gemini is doing its work, there's one final step that we're going to do over here. Now I can finally, actually, I'm going to leave it in O3. Rewrite the outline to take into account the updated information that we have available to us from the deep research done so far. And we're going to start our document. Pop open a document. This is the next piece of the puzzle. Now we've started the document. Make sure to save your work. That's it right there. Semantic sculpting. And then I'm going to want this, so I'm just copying it. I'm going to want this as soon as Gemini comes back. And so for the moment, I get to minimize this. I'm going to go over here to Gemini. I'm going to pull Gemini over to this side of the screen, and then I'm going to pause the recording, and we're going to come back in 4 or 5, maybe 10 minutes when Gemini is done with its version of deep research. Now, the outcome of this is that we're going to have 3 separate, much deeper, much more thorough approaches with a whole lot more information. And we've got a tool, Gemini, that has a 1,000,000 token context window, so it's actually going to be able to process the probably 150 pages worth of material that it's going to pull together for us, which is the reason why we started with ChatGPT, so that it could do it the way that I think and access the information that I've fed in. You heard me talking about this over time into the chats, right? But then pulling that into Gemini and building based on what I have as chat history and ChatGPT, I can pull it into Gemini, which is a much more broad tool. It does better deep research and it has a much bigger context window, so I can work with more information in Gemini. All right, one of them's done, so I'm going to pop this open. So Gemini does some really cool things. Notice there's a create and an export menu. Export, of course, I'm going to export these to docs, and that'll pop it open into my Google Docs, so I won't lose this ever again. But then there's this create side, and Gemini actually allows you to do some very, very cool things with this. And so while the other two are still compiling, I'm going to show you what it might look like. It's also, by the way, an infographic is a great way to validate the results of the research that you just did. Here it is. She is. None of these tools are perfect, and it doesn't seem to have done that well this time. Let's pop this open and see if it's got the others ready for us. Ready for generation? That's coming close. It's not there yet, though. You saw that it came up and it's still thinking. Aha, here we go. Let's pop you out. I just store these in a Google Drive folder that I set aside specifically for this sort of work. Out of deep research, open you up. Let's see if you want to give me an infographic. Done, but not loaded yet. Semantic sculpting, frame, prompt design, not just yet. You might be done. I might need to reload to get you. Not quite done yet. Hey, there it is. Okay, so I have 2 of them here, and then the third one now is done here. So here's what we're gonna do. I actually don't need to pop open another window because I have the results of all 3 available here. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to say, I'm going to bring in 3 more sets of research and an initial outline. I'm going to use all 4 of these to build a workbook for me to deepen knowledge. Here's the first set of research. The other 2 coming and the outline. So remember, I copy, oops, let's pop back over to ChatGPT. This is the first outline or first set of research I want. Because ChatGPT, remember, was a contextual, more shallow version of research, but it was contextually appropriate to the direction I'm heading, which is why it's the first one that I want to drop in here. And we're going to let it start to ingest that. Next, I'm going to drop in the outline to our research papers. Give it a moment while it loads. While it's doing that, I'm going to go do the next sort of hack that I like to do. Again, staying in 03, going to be writing this. Another tool, rather, my writing style specific to this topic, so that the tool will be able to deliver this appropriate to my writing style and to the audience of subject. Give me a full depth writing guide for me to use, including a prompt sample specific to the types of outputs that I would expect in the modules of the workbook, and include the outline. Writing guide should allow for updated progress throughout the writing in accordance with the... I'm going to let that work. I'm going to pop back over here. What is taking so long? See, my mistake was I left it in deep research. So it was trying to compile from the ChatGPT deep research that I dropped in. It was trying to compile a new set of deep research expectations. My mistake. Got to make sure you're using your tools correctly and to understand your tools well enough to know when they're not doing what you expect. Now I have to rewrite that. I might actually be able to, no, I have to rewrite. Research outline together, focus to deepen my knowledge of this material. Here's the first set of research, then outline the other two sets. Mistake was using deep research a second time. Aha, see, now it's doing what I expect. You gotta know that it's doing or not doing what you expect. Okay, the initial workbook. Now it's taking its time because I left it, I accidentally put it back in deep research, which is not where I want it to be. Too fast. I love seeing this. That's an example of a tool that does what it's supposed to. Nope, it popped back into deep research, so I gotta adjust. Gotta be careful about that. Sometimes you have to poke AI. Like, okay, so here's what I want. I can tell by skimming the prompt wasn't detailed enough to follow. The outline was thin. I need the full outline. Because remember, I actually told it that we're going to use multiple tools here. So if it gives a thin outline, then it's setting me up for failure. There's absolutely nothing about my writing and my writing style, who I am, the ways that I approach writing. There's nothing about how the audience is going to receive this, their reading, listening style. Listening is only applicable in this case to the voice in their head. I need to be C2 or to be a great writer. Significantly expand detail, approach, and context of the writing guide as a tool for me as me. Remember, this works for the people that have been using ChatGPT a whole lot, so that it really does actually have the context and capacity to capture the entirety of who you are. If it doesn't have that context for you, if you haven't gone through an exercise like this, probably at least once a month for the last 6 months, take some time and go through working with ChatGPT, go through sort of a coaching process where ChatGPT works with you to build this guide. And then you're going to have it there, and you can then start talking to it like I did, where you say, listen, that was crap. You can do better. I know you can do better, and I'm not going to tolerate your crap. First, using everything we have ingested, let's rebuild the outline. Did it thorough. Complete. It accomplish the goal of deepening my skill through this workbook in the subject. Specifically, did I title it here? That's why you use multiple documents. Semantic Sculpting should just be a tool for crafting prompts. Rather, it should be a tool for fine-tuning myself, my mind, and thinking around how I interact. based tools and ideas. Follow this should be able to interrogate any idea in any circumstance, including with other humans, though this tool should be more focused with AI/LLM. Okay, now we're going to pull that outline out because we're going to rebuild it here. Now that's better. See, we can actually work with that. Need another Word document for this. I don't need to save this as a document. I'm really just putting it there so that I don't lose it and jumping back and forth between windows. Now let's see where we got with the outline. Oh goodness. You saw that I let it use deep research again. Now we're going to do some fine tuning by jumping back and forth between tools. And part of the reason I do this is because these tools work very differently. The other part of the reason I do this is because Gemini does some of this stuff much better, like working with an enormous amount of data. ChatGPT is one of the places where I ask questions like the one that I asked here, which is, I want you to put together a prompt for writing this workbook as me, and build it as a writing guide tool. So this is a tool creation tool, right? If you want to become an amazing blacksmith, the first thing that you need to be able to create is a hammer and an anvil. And what I've just done with ChatGPT is actually build it like a forge. This is how I'm going to use you to create a hammer and an anvil for the purposes of this project. So this became a tool creating tool for me. And because I do this with ChatGPT, I want to be able to bring pieces of what I'm building here back in so that that continues to build the depth of interaction and the depth of the context that ChatGPT can draw on for the next time that I want to do something just like this. And so going back and forth between these two tools, and I'll show you I'm going to use a third tool as well, deepens my access to that context. Now I'm going to show you that third tool. So this is Merlin. And in Merlin, I have access to Claude. Now you might be an Anthropic subscriber, so you might have your own access to Claude, which is great. Claude, an amazing tool, and that's part of the reason why I use it here. Merlin also gives me access to a whole bunch of other models, Gemini, which I use, Grok, which I occasionally use, ChatGPT, and different versions of ChatGPT, DeepSeek. And what's one of the most amazing things about this is that here in one single prompt window, I can actually access Claude, Gemini, and ChatGPT all at the same time because of this tool. Now, I typically don't. Typically, when I'm here in Merlin, it's because I want to access Grok or DeepSeek or Claude, and I use Merlin specifically for those purposes. But it is actually pretty cool. You can tool switch, like I did in ChatGPT. Remember, I model switched, right? But over here in Merlin, now you can actually tool switch from Claude to Gemini to ChatGPT. Having access to an aggregator tool like Merlin is great. One of the ones that I recommended for a while was u.com, but Merlin is the one that I've been on. So what I'm going to do with this is I'm going to say, here's a writing prompt for workbook on semantic sculpting, evaluate and enhance this tool. Now I get to take the benefit of hitting the two tools side by side. Now I'm not going to tell it this is produced by ChatGPT. It doesn't care where this came from. It's just going to do what I told it to do, which is evaluate this, build on it, preserve the things that are strong, and help me build a stronger version. Claude also has a very deep context window, so it can hold a whole lot of information and give me back high quality outputs. At the same time, here I am over here looking at the updated workbook. Now, Gemini doesn't think in terms of modules, it thinks in terms of parts and chapters, which is okay, but I want this workbook to be built in terms of modules, because that's just the way that I interact with this particular language. So to me, that module approach is going to be easier for me to ingest as an output. So rewrite preserving the module approach while continuing to update appropriate to the material that we've gathered and the goal. Okay. I like it. I agree, especially for the library. The exercise box is important. So I noticed that when it was building it, and I was going to build that into the approach with Gemini, but this is a great example of how a separate AI tool actually picked that up and said this is an important part. And I agree, the exercise box is absolutely necessary. It's not really a workbook if it doesn't contain space built in for you to be able to do the work. It might be a playbook at that point, right? But it's not a workbook. Good catch. I hadn't thought of that. Good. Fantastic. Now you do have to say this, expand to accommodate. If you don't say this, it will actually try to fit the exact same size. It won't be exact, but it'll be close, which means it'll find other places to cut. And because I'm using Gemini, and Gemini has 1,000,000 token context window, which is an enormous amount of information, I don't want to limit the amount of inputs that I'm using. Of course, I only want to use inputs that are valuable, but I'm not looking to cut this down. So you have to tell it to expand to accommodate. See, it rewrote in the module approach. This is good. Now, because I'm using multiple tools, one can be doing the work while I'm reviewing the work of the other. And remember, you've got to be connected to the process and connected to the outcome. You need to understand the material. You need to be inside a domain where you have some level of expertise so that you can be connected to the material. Yes, I'm actually genuinely, I'm excited about this one. Yeah, see, cognitive architecture. So it heard me when I said, let's make sure that we're focused on building me up. And that's going to be a big part of this one as well. The sculptor's stance. That's it. Okay. I think I'm going to pull this out. I don't need a workbook to teach me iteration. I think I want this to be a thought process, like a passing thought process, maybe a call out box or something. I don't want it to be part of the workbook because I don't need to be taught to do iteration. Good. Just like what I'm doing right now. While I don't need to be taught that because you guys are watching me do it, I don't think that there's any amount of critical interrogation that is too much in self-training. Yes. Oh, that's going to be fun. Ooh. So we're actually going to expand this one right here, distinguishing between clarification and persuasion, right, on the one side, and manipulation on the other. I think that's important enough that I'd like to see it be its own 5 point, right? So maybe it'll be 5.3. We'll see where that gets placed. My guess is probably 5.3, which means these will all get bumped back a little bit. So in one, we pulled out 2.4. That's going to get shrunk down and added somewhere else. And then here in 5.2, we found one of these and we're going to blow that up. I don't need a semantic capstone project. The workbook is itself a project. In 5.3, don't need a semantic capstone project. Let's allow that to be an alternate path for someone who is sufficiently motivated to go beyond the book. I don't want to be building in that direction. Instead, the workbook should be self-contained for the right user. So that's that one. What else does it have for continuous growth here? I think I want to keep the rest of 5.3. It's the capstone that we're getting rid of. So the capstone can be a passing note, like maybe you want to. Agree. Don't rambling 35-word monster sentences. I don't want inline hashtags, but I might just edit that myself. This is a workbook. Inline hashtags would be distracting. I can't just edit it myself because it's here in other places too. We have a workbook outline. I'm going to go ahead and drop a page break. I'm going to need you over here in a second. Once we have this, what happened? It's doing that here. We don't need 03 right now. So I dropped it back to 4.0. And there's the updated outline. I'm valuing this. Now, part of the reason, remember, there's two things I'm doing here. One is this is a tool for making sure that it captures the way that I approach this, right? So it's an output tool, but it's also an input tool in this case because I want to be able to use that depth of context later. So by bringing that outline back in here, I'm actually continuing to build the depth of context so that I have access to that as a tool in the future. So when this one is finished, I will bring this one back too. Now I'm pretty much done with ChatGPT, and the rest of what I do, I'm actually going to do it in Gemini, because Gemini's context window gives me access to an enormous amount of that data, and I want to be able to use all of that deep research data that I've put in, that you watch me put in here while I'm building. So now I drop in the writing guide. It's good. So this gives directions, and that's what you're looking at here. This gives directions on how to use each of these sections in the process of laying this out as a book, right? Because the end result is not going to be a Word document, which you see here. This is just where we're storing it in the interim. The end result is actually going to be a book. And this helps us understand what each chunk of text is and how it's going to be used in that book. So intro is just going to be text. A concept explainer could be like a call out box. It sort of depends on the editor or whoever puts the book together and what they want this concept explainer to look like visually in the end result. Reflection prompt, that's probably going to be a text box or a call out. And then down here, you're going to see an exercise box. So we're going to see all of these, but but the call out here is specifically saying, well, in addition to all of these, we definitely need work to be able to do what we're doing in here. So, you know, up here there was the reflection prompt, which is going to be call out. Down here we have that exercise box, which is like make sure there's space in between there. You're going to want to be able to do the work, but also take notes in it. There you go. So write for 7 minutes. Now we're not going to put 7 minutes worth of space in here. So, you know, part of that call out box is going to ask for connection to, and this is why I keep saying you got to be connected not just to the process. Yes, connected to the process, but you also have to be connected to the final output, because here we are seeing this tool is doing what I told it to do. But if I'm not connected to that process and I just dump those in and say, good, I'm done, I've got my workbook, then you see something like this and you're going to say, I don't understand how to engage with this material because of how it's laid out. This is great. Again, inside the understanding that the material itself has meaning and the way that it's laid out has meaning. Actually, I'm going to tell it to adjust spaces into the output specifically so that my copy paste contains the intended usage. It didn't seem to understand me, did it? That's okay. While it's writing, as is always the case, do your review. Okay, now you now see the process of building that workbook. I'm going to stop sharing because at this point the rest of it is just continuing to work within the tools, and at the end pulling it all back into, right, my actual last book is called The Forge and the Flow. You can see it in the link below. Pulling it back into my forge, right, which is ChatGPT, the place where I make sure that I have the depth of context so that I can draw on it like you saw me do earlier in the video the next time I need to use the tool to build a project like this. So once I'm finished, I'm actually going to put it all back into ChatGPT and make sure that ChatGPT has that depth of context to be able to draw on it for me. And you get it. Build the prompts, build the research, pull all of it together in a tool that can actually hold all of it. Understanding the way that you want to be able to progress forward, build a prompt for progress, right? And that's the last prompt you saw me working on, put it all together and then ask the tool to start building it. Now remember, this is not intended to be a product for publication. So you're not going to see me put this up and sell it. This is a tool that I built for myself to deepen my own capacity to access this information and to be able to work with it. I want to fine tune my brain and I want to be able to do what you just saw me do better, deeper, faster.